A very good morning once again. It's only 4 minutes to the top of the hour. You're still watching Morning at NTV. I am Priva Elibaz Nwamanya. And in today's Kickstarter, we are understanding the rule of law. Now, the 1995 Constitution provides a broad framework for the observance of the rule of law. However, while the Constitution mandates adherence to the rule of law, Uganda's performance in upholding it, particularly in areas of transparency, accountability, and even human rights protection, remains facing criticism and a lot of challenges. But like never before, of course, the Uganda Law Society has launched a quarterly rule of law report. And to help us understand the quarterly report, the intent behind it, and also the general view of the rule of law, is my guest today, Asiimwe Anthony, who is the Vice President of the Uganda Law Society. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning and thank you for having me here today.
What prompted the Uganda Law Society to launch this quarterly rule of law report, and what could be the key objectives of that report?
Right, thank you. The Uganda Law Society, as a national bar association, has a statutory mandate. Our duty is not just to members, or not to focus on the members of the Law Society, but most importantly is to promote the rule of land access to justice in the country. We have the Uganda Law Society Act, which creates the body.
Yes.
And since 2017, Uganda Law Society has been producing quarterly rule of law reports, but this particular one is special in a way that we had to combine two quarters, and it's because of the nature of what's been happening in the country.
Yes.
The reason we do this is we, as the Uganda Law Society, are supposed to act as a watchdog, you know, in aspects of ensuring there are checks and balances, and because we have a mandate to protect the members of the society, to assist the members of the public generally. And the reason we do this is when you document some of these aspects, when you document issues of rule of law, issues affecting good governance, it is the only way you can have accountability, the only way you can track, and the only way you can have evidence-based discussions. We don't want to just come and talk about things when there's no evidence. So when we launched in the way of pushing for reforms,
yes,
and making sure we improve as a nation, we do document the occurrences that has been happening affecting the rule of law in the country,
yes,
mentioning the areas where we're going wrong, including individuals and institutions, so that when there is documentary proof and evidence, the institutions are put to task, the individuals are held accountable in the eyes of the public.
Yes.
There is a traditional saying that if there are weevils in beans, you put them out to dry. So when you put the beans out, the weevils will come out. And remember, there's a time our president said something about kaunkumi. He used the Uganda, said we have a lot of kaunkumi in, I think it was in Uganda Police, and kaunkumi, that is the weevil. So the only way to deal with kaunkumi is if you put the beans out to dry, yes, the kaunkumi would sort itself. But again, most importantly, we do this in furtherance of our statutory mandate to ensure that we are also accountable, we are relevant to the general public, just as we are supposed to be to the members. So that is why we document these rule of law reports. And also, it's a requirement at the global standard. It's the role of lawyers. The lawyers as independent, National Bar Association as independent body has a particular role to play in society. And this is the best way we can help society. This is the best way we can be of use and relevant to the members of the citizens of this country.
This country at large. I see, well, this quarterly rule of law report covers January to June 2025. From the findings in this report, I want you to highlight some of the positive developments and also the breaches relating to human rights, accountability, and the checks and balances that you mentioned.
Okay. Let me first highlight that while conducting research and working on this report, it was discovered that our ratings as Uganda on the world standards have gone so low.
Yes.
We are, I think, number 126 at the global scene. We are number 126 out of 142. That shows a serious decline in the observance of rule of law and respect for human rights in the country.
Yes.
And this is a worrying situation. I think in the sub-Saharan, we are number 26 out of, sorry, number 39 out of 42. That is also, you know, it's very bad. And that shows you how we stand as a country, where we are. And the reason now we need to investigate is why are we here. But going to the positives, between January and now and June, because this report covers January to 30th June, we saw some positive developments which we believe if we kept on that track would get better or would be in a better position. The first one I'll highlight when we saw, I'll call it judicial activism in the Kabazguruka case, where the Supreme Court came out openly and delivered its judgment on the 31st of January, annulling the trial of civilians in military courts. Actually, we received this judgment with a lot of excitement, because we felt the long fight which had been ongoing, asking ourselves, saying it's unconstitutional to try civilians in military tribunals because they are meant for serving officers. This case had spent over 4 years in the Supreme Court. So we felt the Supreme Court... The 2020 case? Yes, the Kabazguruka case. So we felt the Supreme Court coming out openly and saying, no, it is unconstitutional, it is not proper, and therefore declaring it unconstitutional to try civilians in the military courts was, you know, a good way to show that judiciary has that kind of independence, is fighting, is doing something that is pro-people, pro-rule of law. We've also seen some developments in the areas of accountability. Yes. Recently in February, so the police released the 2024 crime report. Now, that shows accountability, an institution that is trying to be accountable. And we've been saying this is what should have been done. Also in the area of social justice, we saw some institutions coming up to, you know, to step up and be accountable. In the recent past, you had a story of a student who was prevented from doing exams because she had gotten pregnant from an institution. And I personally called out Equal Opportunities Commission, said this falls within your docket, and Equal Opportunities Commission acted immediately. It has a statutory mandate, it has a duty. Yes. They acted, and this student was reinstated. So it's an indication that once some of these institutions are called upon to act, they will do what they're supposed to do. They will be accountable. So those are some of a few developments. That you've seen the trend. Yeah, but like you said, there are also worrying trends, and that is where we have a big problem. I'll begin from the aspect of the judiciary. We saw that judgment we talked about. Yes. But again, yes. But even after post-judgment, we are seeing the Parliament coming again to enact the UPDF Amendment Act, doing exactly the opposite. The opposite. Supreme Court says no trial of civilians in military courts. Parliament is enacting a law after the decision, bringing back civilians in the military courts. And again, we've also seen a persistent disrespect or failure to respect the decision of court. The Supreme Court made it clear that all the files, all the people are being tried in the court should be transferred to civil courts. Civil courts, yes. Now, we felt this mandate was to be taken up by, the Attorney General, the DPP, and we took steps because we realized that since then, you'll notice that since the judgment on the 31st of January, yes, there's no single person who has been released from prison who had been undergoing military trial. These people are still being held in custody illegally, being held in prison because we believe there are no proper warrants, remand warrants to keep them in prison. Yes. In fact, what happens when you're taken to court on a criminal matter and they remand you to prison, there's a remand warrant. Now, most of these guys, especially the Karakunas now from Karamoja, leave alone the people who come out in the open. We know, Chiza Besigye was undergoing the trial, yes, and immediately, at least his file was transferred. He's now going through that normal trial, regardless of what's happening there. But there are those people who are not known, thousands of them. Recently, we conducted prison visits across the country. Yes. And there are so many. Some of them had been given dates to go back to court. But when Supreme Court annulled these courts, yes, these people were kept in prison. The dates have passed. So that means there are remand warrants, because if you're remanded until let's say 5th February. 5th February passed. The person is not taken to any court.
Yes.
He's still in prison, meaning prison is illegally holding these people.
Yeah.
We tried to write to prisons to get this information. We were never given that information. So we decided to go there and conduct these visits. And we find that so many of them, the government has done nothing to implement the decision.
The changes.
The only thing they've done is now to try and you know, bring back these same people who are waiting illegally in prisons. We've also continued to see a lot of you know, interference with the lawyers in their practice, in the practice of their profession. You remember how one of our members, Aaron Kiza, was arrested and detained, trying to represent his client. Now, under the international standards, the IB and the UN, we even have a special rapporteur on the independence of the legal profession. The lawyers are not supposed to be interfered with when they are doing their work. We must have that respect for the advocates, the lawyers, especially in you know, in their legal practice. Now,
well, someone would have said maybe they were in contempt of court.
Now that's where I'm coming. You know, the international standards are very clear on the independence of the legal profession and independence of the lawyers and the protection. They should be really protected, especially when they are doing their work. Now, the aspect of, you know, contempt, you know, that is, we call it a colonial relic. Even the countries like UK, where it started from, it has since been abolished. Yes. Especially when it comes to members. Now, it is creating a situation where lawyers will begin fearing to even appear to represent particular individuals, especially the politically connected individuals, because you know you're not safe. And now that is very dangerous for a country. That's very dangerous, because if the lawyers who are supposed to be, you know, who are supposed to speak for those who can't speak themselves, they are prevented from speaking. You talked about contempt of court. Right now, you know, we're having, I don't want to use this word, a headless bar, because even our president himself, simply because of speaking out and doing what he is supposed to be doing. You know very well that Isaac Semakade was condemned in contempt of court, and there is an arrest warrant, there is a decision where he's supposed to be, you know, in jail for 2 years. By Justice Musa Sekana,
after being held in contempt of judicial officer.
And this leaves us wondering if the head of the bar can be targeted by another institution, by another individual. Where does that leave other lawyers? And if lawyers are not left to independently do their work, think about the members of the public. Now we are seeing a slow, you know, there's that degeneration where it appears like they're trying to create a situation where lawyers are not supposed to freely speak out. They're not supposed to freely represent their clients. They're not even supposed to freely participate in other activities. You've seen in the recent past, we also had our member Abed Nasamudi Obode.
Yes.
Because he's affiliated to a particular political party, he was also, you know, abducted and, you know, taken into, held incommunicado for some days. And we came out to fight. Now this, the picture it paints out there is very bad, because it shows we do not have an independent bar. There has been what we call weaponizing the judiciary against lawyers. So when you talk of contempt now, it's where everyone, if a lawyer gets up to speak, they say, no, you're in contempt of court. Yet you're supposed to speak out freely. There's that freedom of expression. But most importantly, based on the international standards and the IBA standards, we even have a special rapporteur, UN special rapporteur on the independence of the legal profession. Now that has been not respected at all in this country, and that is very dangerous. You see an example. Imagine what Uganda is missing out by not having the president of the bar in the country. Literally, that means that means I have to run 2 offices as the vice president, probably where they would need him in Mubende, and I'm needed in maybe in Kampala. That means one person has been in all those places. It is the general public that is losing out, because we have a mandate. This is what we'll be pushing for, fighting for rule of law. Now, we've also seen a lot of abductions in broad daylight. Abductions, they're holding people incommunicado, a lot of torture. I just told you about our member Nasamudi Obode, when he disappeared for 4 days. We were looking for him. We didn't know where he was, and when he came out, the stories he gave, you had his story. He had been held at CMI. And when we filed an application for habeas corpus, that is when he's produced in court somewhere in Uganda,
yes.
and then we make a bail application and is giving his story. But even before that, you saw we had here Eddie Mutwe, who was abducted also in broad daylight, and he was tortured. When he appeared in court, he was visibly tortured. You could see the wounds and the way he went, the way he was taken is not the way he was.
Okay.
And we are saying, again, you saw, we had also this gentleman, who is also a member, Anthony Asiimwe. It doesn't leave anyone behind. So what we are looking at, this total degeneration of, respect for human rights and due processes. If someone has committed an offense, they should be arrested in a proper way, taken into lawful custody, not in those ungazetted places of detention.
Okay.
And you heard about, the basement and all that. And the unfortunate bit is that the judiciary, which should be protecting personal liberty, has failed to stand up to the test. That is also a rule of law issue. In the Aaron Kizza case, we filed a habeas corpus application. When a habeas corpus application has been filed, court is supposed to abandon everything and they hear it. The judge declined to hear that application. Actually, up to now, it is still they are not fixed. You saw Eddie Mutwe trying to apply for bail in court and visibly showing, how he is, he needs medical treatment. There's no grant of bail. It again leaves that question: do we have an independent judiciary?
Exactly the question I was going to put to you, because from the way you are submitting, it's like the judiciary is being suffocated in so many different ways. But still talking about the government and its transparency and accountability, how can they ensure that due process is followed in all its actions? We talked about the case of case backlog of air. So kindly highlight how the government can ensure due process, particularly in cases that involve suspects and defendants.
Right. That was one of the other rule of law issues, actually, talk about backlog, what it is, the implications. Last week, we had our pro bono week, and we decided to focus on prison visits because we saw there was a very a countrywide cry for justice in that area, criminal justice. And we said, no, it seems our criminal justice is completely broken down. When you talk about case backlog, think about the impact it has, the effect it has, the human rights aspect of it. Our prisons right now should be having a capacity of 21,000 people. That's the capacity we have as, the buildings.
Yes.
But we discovered that currently there are 79,000 inmates. So that is a 380%.
Yeah.
Now, that is because of the backlog in court, the delay of these trials. Unfortunately, about 60% of these people are pre-trial detainees, meaning you're being in prison even before your case has been heard. So you're literally serving a sentence before you're convicted. And we discovered that people have spent over 6 years, 7 years on remand before trial. The unfortunate bit is, even after trial, some of these people will be acquitted for having committed no offense. So that means someone has been denied their personal liberty,
freedom,
and their freedom for so long. Now, we've been trying to engage and speaking to the judiciary, asking, why do we have this? Why can't court do their work? There is a saying that justice denied is justice. Delayed. Justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
So if someone can spend all those years waiting trial and you're in prison, I earlier talked about the Karakunas, the people, even when you have a Supreme Court judgment saying these people should be transferred, they're still being held in prisons, in custody. And the judiciary is clogged with all these cases. There are also civil cases that take long. You go to court and your case is not going to end. Now, it is beginning to make people lose trust in public.
Courts, yes.
And when you look at the judiciary performance report of last year, they're telling that only 10% Ugandans have gone to court to seek justice. So if, as the judiciary, we cannot manage the 10% Ugandans, think of where the 90% go. So if these people lose trust, the 10% also loses trust, and they stop believing that they can get justice from the courts of law. So where does that leave a country?
Absolutely. But counsel, who is to blame? Is it the lawyers who continuously ask for adjournments, or is it the judicial officers that are delaying to actually write their judgments and rulings?
Incidentally, if we go into the blame game, the judiciary as court has control over every matter that is before court. And again, when you look at most of these cases, most of them are actually unrepresented litigants. most of them don't even have lawyers, especially in the criminal cases. When you go to criminal justice, it is the government only avails lawyers when they are capital offenses. But minor cases or cases that people are taken to lower courts, most of them cannot afford lawyers. But it's a constant, consistent, it's an issue of incompetence. It's an issue of absenteeism. It's an issue of corruption. It's an issue of course, sometimes they'll tell us maybe even the facilitation is not enough. Recently, and it's some policies in place. You saw in the recent past we had the massacre lawyers saying we are laying down our tools. We cannot have one judge allocated to the whole region. Massacre and Rakai, where we have over 5,000 cases and expect one person to hear. Even if that person sat every day, every hour, even if they sat 24 hours, they cannot deliver. So there are so many other problems. But we are saying that as an institution, as an independent institution, they need to come up with strategies. It is there not come with strategies where they execute their mandate. I'll give an example. Why should someone appear before court, like I said before? It's on a bail application. Or it's a habeas corpus application, and even refuse to fix it. Just a few weeks ago, you saw our fight with the Court of Appeal. We had matters where our president is being held. Uganda Law Society has been, we have cases we filed in Court of Appeal. The cases are cause listed, then they're removed. Now, if that can be done to the bar, since February, we have cases pending in the Court of Appeal. Very important cases that are affecting governance and other aspects in this country. But you find the judiciary or even the personal individuals, the individuals in those offices fail to perform their work, and they are not held to account. The only important thing is accountability. No one holds them to account. They do whatever they want, and they are not brought to book. So that means the whole institution, you find majority of them, it's a few of them who perform, but the majority of them will fail to do that, and the system remains clogged at the expense of the members of the public, the taxpayer who pays money to make sure those systems work.
Absolutely. And now, let's talk about the culture of legality and the respect for the rule of law. From your discussion, it is clear that it is being abused on all fronts. What can be done to promote that culture of legality, especially among the Ugandan citizens? How can we fight for what is right?
Right. If like I said, the situation is really worrying at all fronts. Looking at what's been happening, I was giving examples. I don't know if you saw what happened in the Kawempe by-elections and what has been happening, the NRM. That's a sign that, the things are bad ahead, where we're headed. But then again, as Uganda Society was saying, we have a mandate as the lawyers, as the national bar, to promote and protect rule of law and good governance in this country. But then again, it is the duty of every citizen. Because if you sit back and you keep quiet, they will come until they reach your door. And you'll, at the end of the day, you have no one to speak for you as well. So we are calling upon every institution. We have institutions that are accountable, institutions that should be doing their work in every aspect. Let it be, security agencies, let it be, parliament, let it be judiciary, let it be even at an individual level. You realize that people have reached this point where everyone is not bothered about what's happening
in the country.
Now, when you come out to speak, then you're punished. Like I gave you an example of our president of the Uganda Law Society. And everyone keeps quiet. Everyone fears. So I think it's time for Ugandans to come up and speak for themselves. If the lawyers cannot speak, if the lawyers speak, add your voice. And this is what I was telling people yesterday, that we cannot do this alone. I know there's also a shrinking space of civil society organizations that have been coming up to speak because of the oppressive nature and high-handedness of these agencies and government preventing them from coming out. But again, we must remain focused. We must continue fighting for what is right. We have a constitution that that governs us. It's very clear. Every citizen has a right to fight for their rights. And I believe it's one, we need to hold people accountable. Again, if someone has committed a wrong, if someone has failed to perform what they're supposed to perform, they need to be held accountable. They need to be made to pay. If you have an issue, come out and speak. Do not sit back and wait for people to speak for yourselves. And then again, there's a wrong aspect of limited civic education.
Yes.
Most Ugandans are not aware of these rights. Those who have an opportunity, we've been moving out, conducting sensitizations, teaching people about their rights. Anyone who has an opportunity, even journalists. I felt bad when I saw journalists being battered during the Kawempe elections. It sent a very bad message because, you see, journalists have voices. They bring out information there. The public sees from the journalists.
Absolutely.
Now, if the journalists are also being curtailed and the people doing that are not being held accountable, it's also another big challenge. So let's use every space we have. If you're a journalist, if you're a pastor, if you're a reverend, if you're a lawyer, speak from the point where you are.
You understand, yes. Now, as we wrap up, what are the next steps for the Uganda Law Society in terms of follow-up actions and also trying to engage the stakeholders in order to address the rule of law challenges that you have identified in the quarterly rule of law report?
All right. I'll briefly first speak about what we've done in the past and what we intend to continue doing, because we felt it's not enough to just speak, to just come and talk without taking action. Immediately in the wake of the Kawempe by-election, we came up with a declaration of an alliance against electoral violence.
Yes.
Because we know 2026 is coming and these signs are bad. If you saw what happened in the NRM primaries last week, 2 weeks ago, it was bad. So we've been recruiting everyone to sign that alliance, including media personnel, political party heads, all the institutions, Uganda Police, Electoral Commission, and in that we have come up with, we've come up with the different roles each institution, each person is supposed to play, including, education, policy, formulation. And then you look at our report again, we've clearly structured various recommendations for every institution. Parliament, we are calling upon them to enact some laws and policies that can work towards protecting and promotion of the rule of law. Now, what we intend to do, we are saying it's not just enough to speak and stop there. We're action-oriented. And what we intend to do after this, with all the recommendations we made, we need to come up with an action matrix. And that's what we shall do, where we track, we continue monitoring these institutions, and we keep tracking and following up. Ours is to document. So every after a particular period of time is to go and follow up on that action matrix and see this was a recommendation for Parliament. Has Parliament done its work? This was a recommendation for police. Has police done its work? This is a recommendation for the executive. Has this been done?
Implemented, yes.
And then we keep calling these people to action, because we realize if we do not do that, it will not help. We'll just sit back and wait for another rule of law report where we are mentioning the wrong things without action. And also recently established what we call our weekly press and press engagement with the public and members of the bar. And every week we highlight the underlying issues, rule of law issues, publicly. And members of the press are always there. The members are viewing this. It's done digitally and physically. We'll continue doing that as a way of monitoring and holding people to account, because you see, when you know they're on your toes, you're going to do your work, you're going to perform.
Right job, yes, absolutely. Yes. As we get your parting shots in 30 seconds, why are lawyers so expensive? You
see, legal practice is, it's a job. It's a source of earning, and it is sad. But if you look at our country, statistics say that out of 10 people, only 2
can afford a lawyer.
Afford services of a lawyer. That is why the Uganda Law Society, we have the Legal Aid Project and the Pro Bono Scheme. We actually have lawyers who offer free legal services for the people who deserve the free services.
And I think it's a mandatory right as a lawyer
we've
do pro bono?
Yeah, we've been very particular and intentional about it. That's why we even had the whole week, last week, of lawyers offering pro bono services. But then again, lawyers charge according to the rules, the regulations that govern how lawyers charge and how they charge their legal fees. It's not out of the blue. There are particular regulations, and these are standards that are recognized all over. It's a service someone goes for, just like they go to hospital to get medicine. But even those who cannot afford services of a lawyer, we have so many other options, like our Legal Aid Project, where we are operating in over 28 districts. And there are so many Ugandans who cannot afford, so many Ugandans who are supporting. I think in our last year's report, we supported over 60,000 people who could not afford to pay service for lawyers. Well, we are giving them free legal services. That's
amazing. That's a good job. Well done. Well, I've been speaking to Mr. Asiimwe Anthony, the Vice President of the Uganda Law Society. He has been trying to help us understand the quarterly Rule of Law report that was released recently, covering January to June 2025. We've been understanding the rule of law, and now we take a break. Morning at NTV returns shortly.